So right here, how it'll work, do the play action, escape, maybe set our feet. You can toe tap that, or you can rack catch that. Maybe sometimes you can even walk into the end zone. And we're back, this time with a money play from pistol ace U off, probably one of the least used formations in the entire game. You don't see much pistol to begin with, but this formation in particular is only in 3 playbooks: Carolina, pistol, and spread. So kind of tough to find, but it has 2 of the best shot plays in the entire game in PA deep cross and PA boot wide drag, as you see here. Having said that, the main play I'll be showing here, PA boot wide drag, relies on this specific ultra deep crossing route that gets above deep flat zones. And you can actually find this route in other formations, you just have to look around. So take a look through your playbook in pistol or somewhere under center maybe. One might be waiting for you to be used already. Otherwise, if you've used my Carolina offense in the past, this play fits nicely within that. Side note though, if you're looking for an entirely new offense that actually isn't related to this video, I just recently released a Cleveland Browns ebook through AntCap and HuddleGG. I think it has some of my best concepts of Madden 21 all in a really nice and digestible package. Definitely one of my favorite things that I've put together throughout my entire Madden YouTube career. I had a lot of fun putting it together. And actually having a lot of fun actually just using it on my own. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. I think most of you probably know what Huddle is already, so I don't need to explain it too much there. They make amazing content for the community, so I'm just happy to be able to contribute there. But with that all being said, let's get into this video with pistol ace U off, PA boot wide drag against nickel 335 wide Mike Blitz 3 with the crazy deep zone drop adjustments. So here we have the play. Before we go over the play, we need to obviously just take a little recap on the types of defenses you see and why this play could possibly be good there. So this is the type of thing that you see these days, not all the time, but it seems to be the main popular meta defense, where you have a 2 or 3 man rush out of nickel 335 wide. You have 3 deep zones. Essentially, you have 2 deep flat zones with these 25 or 30 yard flats. You have short flat zones on each side, usually 5 yards, maybe 10 yards. And then a user that just covers the entire middle of the field. And you can kind of pick apart the middle of the field, all the way up the field, which is fine. But if we want to start to try to attack this otherwise thought of as impenetrable stack of zones on the sidelines with the low flat, the high flat, and then the deep outside zone, we need to think about using different routes than our conventional corner routes or conventional crossing routes. And this one right here is a particularly deep crosser that is unique and allows us to get above this deep flat zone that we otherwise thought is kind of safe in terms of defending those types of routes. With that being said, that's not the only place that we can attack there. We can attack between the high flat and the low flat because there's usually 20 yards of space there. But that's not really the main focus of this video, but there'll be a few little tips and tricks there in terms of attacking that area, and then even one in terms of attacking above the deep outside third zone. So although there's 3 stacks of zones there, we can fit it in between those zones and even above those zones. We just need to be a little bit smart with it. So right here, what we'll go ahead and start off with is attacking again above that deep flat zone. So right here, I have 25 yards set for now for this demonstration. And I have this deep crosser set to the boundary, but I don't think it really matters. What really matters is the route combinations, and then of course you want high throw power and preferably gunslinger on your quarterback because it is a pretty deep throw to make. The other thing is that we need some time for that crosser to get across the field. And the one way we're going to be doing that, because likely we can't just sit in the pocket and wait for that to cross all the way across the field, we're going to need to escape. And so to do that, we'll use the kind of glitchy and exploitative tight end delay fade on to the side that we're booting out on. So that delay fade works for 2 reasons. It allows us to get a solid block on the edge, essentially, on the edge defender, and allows us to escape easily. And then as a last-ditch effort, we can release him and throw him to the middle of the field. The other thing is we'll just go ahead and clear out that corner on the other side, and there you have it. You're already ready. Just 2 hot routes. You're ready to go. So right here, how it'll work: do the play action, escape. Maybe set our feet. You can toe tap that, or you can rack catch that. Maybe sometimes you can even walk into the end zone. So that's already nice on its own, but there's actually a few other options that you can take if you want them. Obviously, this play is only useful for certain parts of the field. I think once you get into like the 30, maybe 40 of the other end of the field, then things start to compress a little bit. But once you're in the regular field of play, you'll have all this space to work with. Otherwise, if you're coming up across deep flat zones without a low flat, you can just look at that immediately. You can see this other tight end in the flat. Just go ahead and throw it to him, pick up your 10, 15 easy yards if you want that. Or what's also cool, if they do have that low flat zone, and you wouldn't be able to throw that flat to the U tight end, but you can actually just playmaker him up the field, and you can throw him there too, between the low flat and high flat if you want. But if the user starts to get involved, say if he's covering the crosser himself or covering that flat route themselves, we do, of course, have that tight end delay fade as the backbreaker route. I don't know what he did there, but anyway, we released him, and he's in the middle of this field. All this open space to work with is a true backbreaking route. But again, usually we won't even need to consider that stuff unless the user is really covering this crosser. If he isn't, we'll just have this over here for easy, big chunks of yards. Okay, now moving on, same play, same combination, except I have changed these flat zones to drop to 30 yards, which I don't think you see as often, but even 30 yards, we can throw this above them. It gets a little bit tighter, so having Gunslinger is even more important, and setting your feet is even more important. But, you might want to make sure not to have any, make sure that your opponent isn't running like deep out zone or acrobat and things like that. It just makes it a little bit riskier. But if you're looking for a deep gain, you can disregard it all and still go ahead and throw your route over that deep flat zone and still get your huge chunk of yards. So what I did there was a forward pass lead. So you'll want to make sure that you do forward and a little bit outside, because if it's just outside, I think then that deep flat zone has a chance of undercutting that. But with a forward pass lead, you should be okay. The other thing you can do to clear up more space is that you can motion this U tight end over and put him on a regular fade. So he won't hot route to a delay fade, he'll hot route to a regular fade. And what that'll do is that will push that outside corner back, but also bring him inside a little bit. So I think that gives you a little bit more space to work with. And then what you can do is just leave this guy on a comeback route, right? Because we don't need 2 receivers pushing deep. The comeback route actually works as a nice last option if things break down. So again, 30-yard flat zones right here, except I think it works a little bit better. So right here, forward pass lead, and again, we get that nice completion. But if they're running 30-yard flats, we don't necessarily need to force that. I think it's actually beneficial for us, because if they're running 30-yard flat zones, that's essentially like they're running 5 deep zones. And then we'll just have so much room to work with underneath with regular crossers or corner routes or out routes, or, like I was showing here with the comeback route, you have that option as well. So you don't need to force it, you have other options. Then we can switch it up a little bit, take a bit of a different take on this. If we want to try to get a score out of this, we can attack above the deep outside third rather than below him. So just like that. So what we'll do is the same thing, of course, the delay fade to the side we're rolling out on. And then instead of streaking the outside receiver, we'll actually comeback him, smart route that comeback. So what that'll do is that we'll bring the cornerback down rather than pushing him up. And then we have the opportunity to throw the ball above him. So this is a bit of a tough throw to make, especially with the 30-yard flat. But we can throw that there, just like that. Or what we can do is we can actually just streak this U tight end right here, and that'll just take the attention of the free safety a little bit more. So that'll just give us a little bit more room to throw a forward pass lead out here and take that all the way up the field for our one-play score. But, you do have to be careful here because, sometimes, although I think it's less so now that there are with the cover 3 patch, but you still sometimes see guys, putting outside halves here just to be safe against those cover 3 bombs. So in this case, if you do something like this and you see that that guy isn't sucking down, you don't want to force that, but you do have the comeback here or the delay fade if that breaks down, which is nice. And this doesn't just apply to cover 3. I think this applies to really any coverage in the game, particularly these spot drop zone coverages, particularly with the ones with the zone drop adjustment. So even against, say, cover 2 here with the cloud flats in 25, 30-yard zones, it kind of works the same way, really, because they're just dumb zones essentially going to a specific area on the field. And again, you'll be able to find that sweet spot for your big gain. And then moving on to man coverage, you'll be good here as well. Assuming, I think things start to break down. Obviously, if the user covers that across the field, but things break down if they have deep zones, like really deep zones, like 30-yard deep zones plus man coverage. Things start to break down a little bit, but for the most part, I think you're okay. Like say for in cover 0 here, pressed, shaded over the top type of thing. Same thing. Ideally, you'll see that it's man coverage, and then you'll kind of take this receiver out of the play, because if he's running a streak, then you start to get man coverage DBs in the same area, and it becomes a bit of a mess. So if you can, if you know it's man coverage, try to get him out of the picture. But what you see here is that this crosser usually does a pretty good job of getting open here, and if you can rat catch that can be a big score. But just be careful, if they have, actually let's go cover 2 man right here. Let's put this guy in a deep flat right here. So if we do the same thing right here, again, try not to force it if you don't have to. But, you do have other options. Sometimes they don't work, but just be careful. But I think in general, at least the way I've been running this in this short period of time, is that this isn't really a go-to main offense unless you really want to just cheese through mediocre players. But I think, obviously good players will catch on and be able to defend things. But where it's great, I think, is, towards the middle or end of the game, if you need a good big play, I'll come down to this because usually players aren't set up to defend this if they haven't seen it. You can switch it up a little bit, so you don't have to run it, booting to the right and throwing the crosser to the right. This is running this play to the left, essentially, is a good way to beat these stacked flat zones. So if we have something like this to this side, let's go like this, this type of defense right here. What we can do is leave this kind of, cross and go route from the tight end right here. And rather than having this receiver on a crosser, we can just clear out any of those deep zones over there. And so what's cool is that, if you run this a couple times and the user starts to kind of move that way with the regular flow of action, what you can do is kind of cancel this boot and then throw this little cross and go route for an easy gain between those zones. So that's really cool, I think. If you want to get really crazy with it, maybe it's not the best option, but what you can do is you can maybe delay fade this tight end, the U tight end right here, and you can actually wait for this cross and go to clear both of the flat zones and try to squeeze it in there. This is, if you're desperate for a big gain. With this receiver, maybe, you cross him or something like that, just so that you can preoccupy this guy a little bit in the middle of the field. Let's put this guy on a little short flat right here. You can cancel this, roll out to the left if we have time. Maybe we can fit this in right here and walk into the end zone that way. So a few really nice options, within this one play alone. First of all, a few passing options to the right, a couple different ways to run it, and then also to the left as well as a nice little change up. And then there is another play that I won't really go over much in this video. Maybe I'll save it for another video, is that you also have this PA deep cross play, which has this nice crossing route from the tight end right here, which gets underneath those deep flat zones and over the top of short flat zones. So, if you have something like this, you can he'll find that sweet spot right there, and you just have all this space to work with. So from there, it becomes really tough for your opponent to decide, like how deep am I setting these zones? If if it's too deep, I'm gonna be getting hit with this short crosser to the left side. If I, even if it's 30 yards, you still have difficulties covering this super deep crosser right here. If you start to give up some of these underneath flat zones, like the 5-yard stuff, then you can, hit them with this drag over here, or even with this little table route from the play action over here. If the user starts to really, leave the middle of the field, you have options with this, dagger on this play. Over here, you have options with the tight end delay fade after all that is said and done. A lot of really good stuff. And then to be honest, there isn't too much with this formation in terms of off of those two plays. Depending on what playbook you're running this out of, I think pistol and spread have a number of interesting running options with stretch and read option. But with Carolina, you really only have this like inside zone, which can be easily shot. So maybe it's not the best thing, but some nice plays here and there. And then I will end it off with PA deep cross right here. One more thing you can do with it is that this deep post is really nice. Obviously against cover 2, you can split safeties. Against cover 4, match, the post is nice. Against cover 0, the post is nice. But it's also a cover 3 beater. So if you get, this type of thing, you don't get much of a pass rush here. They're running deep thirds out here. Kind of the generic way to run this type of stuff. You can find space above the deep middle safety right here. If I threw that okay, did I? Yeah, for a 1-play score. So it's not maybe the best thing to rely on, but again, if you want a 1-play score, and if they're sending everybody in zone coverage and you can buy a little bit of time in the pocket, it's a nice way to kind of bug out that middle third safety. Because he comes down a little bit on this crossing route and that dig route over here, and that gives you just enough space to hit this deep post over the top. But you really need that throw power, you really need that gunslinger, and then I think it only works with the post sent to the boundary here. But play around with that as you will. I think if you get really good at this play, you can do a lot of damage with that. But then it's good to have this kind of play off of that to run some things that your opponent won't expect. Anyway, so that's it for this video. Sorry for the hiatus, but I think this is really fun stuff. If you can't find this in your playbook or a playbook that you might like, look around. I think some of the single back sets I saw these super deep crossers in it, and there might be some in some other nice formations. Okay, that's it for this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.